Another scheduled showdown over library books, but members of the Meridian Library District are well versed in this song and dance and calls for them to be dissolved. It's supposed to be a republic, representative government. Well, more than a month into Idaho's legislative session, and many of you have asked, what exactly are our representatives representing? It's been 6 months since Idaho banned abortions. How's that been working? Well, one woman shares her story on how a local medical clinic made it possible for her to be a mom. After finding no success in removing books from library shelves or taking over the library leadership, a group of concerned citizens in Meridian have just decided to take the whole system down altogether. Stop me if you've heard this before. They say the library district supports sexual indoctrination of children and refuses to discuss obscene and sexually explicit materials they think should not be in the library. And they've collected signatures of those who agree with them. And they want to dissolve the Meridian Library District. Today, those concerned citizens got their petition officially recorded when it was presented to the Ada County Board of Commissioners. If you can't beat them, join them. If you can't join them, well, just burn the building to the ground, I guess. So what do the people of the Meridian Library District think of this next step? Here's Joe Paris.
A petition for the dissolution of the Meridian Library District.
Ada County Commissioners are now in possession of this, a petition to dissolve the Meridian Library District. A group called the Concerned Citizens of Meridian accused the Meridian Library District of allowing materials in their libraries targeted toward sexualizing minors and providing facilities for sexual indoctrination of minors. They also claim the library district refuses to discuss policy on the topic and has shut out conversations at open meetings.
Honestly, I'm a bit saddened. We know at Meridian Library that we are a beloved and vibrant part of this community.
Megan Larson is chair of the Meridian Library District Board of Trustees.
We have 45,000 card holders, active card holders. We have over 1 million items that we circulate per year. We have hundreds of thousands of visits to our location every year. So it's really sad that a small group of folks are willing to dissolve the library, shut it down completely, rather than let families make their own choices about what they want to read, as they've done for nearly 100 years in Meridian.
The attention on libraries in Idaho is magnified in recent years, with campaigns and community conversations about what content should be in the library. In this instance, Larson believes it is a small group making big accusations.
I think this is a vocal minority. Thinking back to our levy in 2019 that passed with a supermajority of voters that were very excited about the new branches that we're bringing to Meridian, Unbound, where we're sitting right now, our Orchard Park branch that is to open this spring, and then a South branch that is on the way. Voters told us clearly that they wanted to expand library services and that they valued the services that we provide.
Larson says the library district is big on parental involvement in the content their children access, and that message has been very clear to the concerned group.
We have communicated, we've met with them, we've shared the tools that they can use to monitor what their children are checking out, how they can find materials that fit with their interests and values. We have shared that the thing that they are seeking, which is restricted access, people not being able to access the books that they want in a public library, will not withstand a First Amendment challenge. We know that these cases have gone through the courts in the past. In Nampa, they faced a similar issue when they tried to put a book behind the desk, and there was a challenge to that, and the board had to back off of that.
Larson says, yes, there is content in their system that contains what some families would not want their children reading. However, other families may have different thoughts. They have to serve the whole community, not just one segment.
Not everybody wants to check out those books and read them together with their children, and that is fine, right? Those are individual choices that folks can make. What concerns us is attempting to impose those choices on every family and to decide, this small group of folks decide what is right for every family. We know the needs and interests are very diverse.
Promoting the sexualization of children is a serious claim. The petition claims that Meridian Library District, quote, continues to provide facilities for the sexual indoctrination of minors.
What does that mean to you when you read that?
I mean, indoctrination is such a loaded word. We make materials available on a wide variety of topics, presenting a wide variety of viewpoints, as is clearly outlined in our collection development policy, what the criteria are for selection. So representing a variety of voices and making sure that we have materials that are a diverse and inclusive collection, because Our population that we're serving is diverse and inclusive, so we are meeting those needs. Not every material in the library is for every reader.
Through social media conversations on the topic, there seems to be some that don't understand what the petition would do if it eventually does become successful. To be very clear, it wouldn't clean out the board to simply install a new one. It cleans out the entire system.
To be clear, that is not what would happen. If the citizens voted to dissolve the library, the Ada County Commissioners, would need to dispose of the assets of the library. They've been very clear on that. It says on the press release on their website, they must dispose of the assets. So the library would go away completely should the voters vote to dissolve it.
The petition being filed and signatures being certified begins a process that will soon likely involve public testimony. Larson believes that testimony from the entire community, not just one segment, won't reflect the accusations and claims in this petition.
Overwhelmingly, I think we'll hear from support from the residents of Meridian. I think we saw lots of activity on the Facebook page of Ada County for folks that coming out strongly to support. We hear from our patrons all the time about their strong support of the library and how they value the services that we provide. So I would expect a strong showing of support for Meridian Library District.
And the concerned citizens said that they also have concerns about finances and financial transparency. And Brian, when I was talking to Megan about this afternoon, she told me that they are very transparent with all of their finances. You can check them online right now. So in terms of, that accusation as well, they're not concerned about it.
Yeah, it seems like they're not really concerned much about this petition and this proposal to dissolve the library. But to have it all just go away, it's serious, but to have it all just go away, does that seem like a possibility? That doesn't seem like much, but we'll see. All right, thanks, Joe. All right, so yesterday, well, it might have been probably the least surprising committee vote of the season so far. After nearly 6 hours, over 2 days of public testimony in the Senate Education Committee, the controversial Education Savings Account bill passed that committee 6-3. 5 of those yes votes came from sponsors of the bill. So again, like I said, no surprise that it was going to get through, regardless of what was said during that public testimony, even though a vast majority of public opinion was opposed to this bill by a count of like 2-1. Still, senators decided to continue the legislative process, as Senator Herndon phrased it, passing the idea to the full body of the Senate. The committee suggested having more voices in that Senate could be good for conversation. So we'll see. If there is any indication lawmakers at the State House are advancing bills at the State House a vast majority of Idahoans don't seem to really want, well, that ESA bill would be a prime example of that. And that bill, as well as several others, are getting noticed and prompting viewer questions like this one that was sent in to us after seeing that a bill has been introduced to make administering a COVID vaccine a misdemeanor. I'm wondering what legitimate bills are being introduced, if any, asks Gaga M. Well, that's a great question, Gaga, and one we've heard a few times over the last couple of weeks. To address this, we thought we would look at what might be a legitimate bill. For the last 8 years, Boise State University has put out an Idaho public policy survey. They do this during a week in mid-November when they ask about 1,000 adults, exactly 1,000 adults from 43 of Idaho's 44 counties. They ask them some questions. It's intended to track Idahoans' opinions of the direction of the state and what they view to be important issues being handled at the State House. We've talked about these things when the results came out a couple weeks ago, actually. And what we learned then, when it comes to the direction of the state, well, it's about 50-50. Those who think the state is headed in the right direction, that's at 44%. Those who think the state is headed in the wrong direction, about 41%. Given the plus minus of the 3%, it's pretty even. For the first time in the 8-year history of the survey, those numbers are that close. Republican men were more optimistic than Democratic women, believe it or not. When the survey wanted to know about the Idaho legislature, though, it asked people to rate what they feel would be important topics to tackle during the upcoming legislative session. They gave them prompts and asked them, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being not at all important and 10 being extremely important, where should lawmakers focus their attention? So these are where most people rated these topics in the 8 to 10 range of their survey. Education, 72% of them said, yeah, I'd rate that higher than 8 or around the 8 to 10 range. Jobs and economy, 64%. Housing, 61%. Healthcare, 60% of those surveyed. Taxes, 54% of those surveyed say, yes, pretty important. Environment, 51.5%, and transportation, 42%. So that kind of rounds out where you see where those ideas lie. So we took a look at the bills that have been introduced so far at the Idaho State House on this 38th day of the session. And so far, we've had 266 bills brought forward. Unless something's come through in the last hour and a half or so, that is our number. That's in both chambers, 159 in the House, 107 in the Senate. We tried to break them down as best we could by category. If it had anything to do with education, from teacher apprenticeships to medical school agreements to the Idaho Launch Program, and so far there have been 19 education bills introduced at the State House, including that ESA bill, which would actually move money away from public schools. Jobs and economy, just 9 bills. Housing, none that have to do directly with housing, even though 61% of Idahoans think it should be very important to lawmakers. Healthcare, 23 bills so far, including one in the House to repeal Medicaid expansion. Taxes, there have been 19 bills in the House, 5 in the Senate. Only one of those has to do with property taxes, though, in the Senate. 6 of them have to do with property taxes in the House, and there's just one from the House to repeal the grocery tax. How about the environment? Well, more than half of those surveyed said it was a pretty big deal. There are just 4 bills in both chambers that reference that topic. 3 of them have to do with water. Transportation, well, there are quite a few bills in the State House that have to do with that. 22 in the House, 11 in the Senate, for a total of 33. Now, they're not all about infrastructure, though. A majority of them have to do with, like, driving rules, who can teach driving, and license plates. So they're pretty widespread. That's how current bills connect to the survey list put out by BSU. As for the outside of that list, there are 15 bills that have to do with elections, 2 that have to do with militias, and 1 that has to do with raw milk. Just a side note. But it's interesting, as Lady Gaga there alluded to, there's a lot of bills coming from a category we called and titled, for no other reason than just to call it this, morality signaling. Having something to do with a moral issue. That would be like abortion or withholding funding from cities who don't prioritize prosecuting abortions. Anything LGBTQ, like bathrooms or transgender minors, to be specific. There are bills about vaccines and the COVID pandemic. Those militias we mentioned, that's in there. Marriage licenses and bills having to do with child protective services, something that seems to be important in this post-Baby Cyrus Idaho. There's a lot of them. 21 of those from the Senate side. From adding the words sexual orientation and gender equity to the Idaho Human Rights Act, to a bill preventing vaccines from popping up in our food, which isn't really happening in Idaho. Worth mentioning, that bill and 12 others of those Senate bills are sponsored by members of the Freedom Caucus. That's the Freedom Caucus, self-described. 6 of them came from Republican Senator Scott Herndon alone. On the House side, there are 13 what we call moral signaling suggestions, including one introduced yesterday by Senator Tammy Nichols about making anyone who gives an mRNA vaccine, like a COVID vaccine, they want to make that a misdemeanor. So yes, Gaga, so far the bills that fall into this category and well outside the parameters of what Idahoans feel are important issues, a lot of them outnumber the bills many of us would consider hot topics for lawmakers to be talking about. What choices are women making when they find out they're pregnant 6 months after abortions were made illegal in Idaho? The choices are limited, but not limiting, according to Stanton Healthcare. All right, now's the time for you to send us your comments so we can talk about them at the end of the show. Just make sure you include your name and the hashtag the 208 when you do text them in to the number on your screen, 208-321-5614. And remember, keep them clean, keep them concise, and keep them clever. All right, well, we reported extensively on the impact of overturning Roe v. Wade has had in Idaho. Abortions can happen for one of three reasons. Includes a rape, reported to police, can happen because of incest, or a doctor's decision to save a mother's life. We reported on the gray area surrounding these exceptions as well. Months later, though, what has the impact been with this regard? Are more mothers going through with their unexpected pregnancy, or are they all just heading to other states like Washington and Oregon for abortions? Well, Stanton Healthcare says they are the busiest they have ever been. Their clinics specifically do not provide abortions, and they look to do everything else in hopes of helping mothers choose to keep their baby. Here's Andrew Bartline.
Life is laced with unexpected turns.
I grew up Christian, so I never believed in that. I knew it was wrong.
J.C. Jensen's latest was a pregnancy.
It was very straightforward. All they did was love me, encourage me, provide real medical care, and help me make the choice that I wanted to make.
They are Stanton Healthcare, and this is J.C.'s daughter.
And they were constantly asking me, do you need anything? Like, that is the one thing, the one phrase that I remember from Stanton. They gave me diapers, wipes, clothes, a diaper bag.
Stanton founder,
Yes,
Brandy Swindell, says it's all free of charge.
100%.
Today, Stanton shared these stories with state lawmakers, congressmen, mayors, and lobbyists, all at the Idaho State House, all in hopes to get their support in a post-Roe Idaho.
And since there is now a ban in Idaho, we are busier than ever. We actually have an 18-month program, so the women come to us for the duration of their pregnancy and then a minimum of 9 months afterwards. But their case is never closed. They can come to us as long as they need to.
Ultimately, JC's is a story of acceptance, but it has turns.
Rejected by my family. I was rejected by my friends. I was rejected by churches.
Rejection.
Because I was pregnant out of wedlock.
JC originally walked into a Planned Parenthood. She asked about the possibility of an abortion.
And told them I was thinking of aborting the baby, and on the phone they just said, come in, we'll give you an abortion. They didn't ask who I was. They didn't ask my story. They didn't ask how far along I was.
But she took a turn to the clinic across the street.
I remember saying out loud, I'm going to go in there, and if they can change my mind, then I will let them, and if not, I will go back to Planned Parenthood. When I saw my baby's heartbeat for the first time, there was just no getting an abortion for me.
Planned Parenthood tells KTVB in a statement, quote, as part of an appointment, patients talk with their providers and are presented with all their options. We trust our patients to make the best decision for themselves and their circumstances and their families. The two organizations have seemed at odds since Stanton started.
So, gosh, 17 years?
And in a post-Roe America, Stanton's working to meet the unexpected turn, the increase in demand for their services.
Overcome depression, anxiety, and found purpose for my life. So they not only helped me with my baby's needs, but they honestly saved my life too.
Stanton is primarily run by Christian women, and they say no religious affiliation or practice is necessary or required to get health care or resources at their clinics. And as you saw in there, they have a mobile clinic as well. The Idaho clinics are 100% privately funded, according to Swindell. Their position is that abortion is not the answer, so they aim to be an alternative to remove any other barriers they can, such as financial burdens through those first 18 months. It's an organization that has gotten the attention of lawmakers. Brian, as you saw there, Russ Fulcher, congressman, he was there today, and a couple state lawmakers. I saw some mayors. I can think of Simison from Meridian, right. Debbie Kling from Nampa as well. So a few mayors in attendance too.
When she said to you their organization is busier than ever, was there any perspective given with that? Like, how were they before these laws were passed versus what they're doing now?
We didn't get exact numbers. In a phone call with them beforehand. We told them that that's what we wanted to talk about, and that was probably about 2 hours since we met up with them. So didn't get exact numbers, but they say that they are busier than ever.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew.
The justification for the incarceration orders was that Japanese Americans were committing acts of espionage. The truth of the matter is that the military, through the help of the Federal Communications Commission, realized pretty quickly that none of that was true.
This Sunday, February 19th, is the anniversary of President Franklin Roosevelt signing Executive Order 9066, an anniversary that is less celebration and more reflective remembrance, which is why it's called a Day of Remembrance. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, public sentiment toward Japanese Americans, well, blew up. 10 weeks later, that Executive Order 9066 was signed, and it gave the U.S. Army the authority to forcibly remove 120,000 Japanese American civilians from their homes along the West Coast and put them in internment camps all across the country. More than 13,000 of them ended up in the Minidoka Incarceration Center in Idaho. Last year, John Osaki, the man we just heard from, he came out with a documentary called Alternative Facts, The Lies of Executive Order 9066. Osaki's parents were sent to an internment camp in Northern California, and that documentary was all about hiding the truth that Japanese Americans were not a threat to national security, yet the incarcerating continued. The documentary also looks at the parallels between current attitudes toward immigrant communities and similar attempts to abuse governmental power.
Real people suffer severe consequences when they get pulled into this political agenda for really power.
So the idea of never forgetting our past so we don't flub up our future is front and center. And this Sunday is one way to remember where we've been. There's a Day of Remembrance event hosted by the Idaho State Museum, including community partners like the Idaho State Historical Society and the Minidoka National Historical Site. This Sunday's program is called The Power of Words because, well, they say words and silence is what led to these violations of civil liberties. There's going to be a short film to watch, speakers to hear, and discussions to have. The Day of Remembrance is from 2:30 to 3:45 Sunday at the Idaho State Museum. It's free, but space is limited, so make sure you register beforehand. You can do that at history.idaho.gov. Final minute of the show. Let's get to your comments like this one from Rick in Meridian. Every year, I'm convinced our legislature can't possibly be more out of touch with issues really important to the majority of Idahoans. And every year, they surprise me, he says. I think rather than dissolving libraries, parents should monitor their children's choices before they check out materials to be sure those materials are acceptable. Library personnel are not babysitters, says Sue. And we've talked about that, too, over the last year and a half when libraries became front and center of the moral majority, I guess. Will the people of Idaho ever get to vote on the greater Idaho border change? And why not before this is debated in the legislature, asked Dave? Well, actually, it's set up that only the legislatures have to agree, and then Congress says go ahead. So it isn't up to the vote of the people. The reason they're voting on it in Oregon is because they're trying to convince their lawmakers to start talking about it. The young woman had a baby and things worked out for her. But did anyone notice she had the choice? No law made that choice for her. Perfect example of Idaho hypocrisy, says CLC. Last one here. As said in Footloose, the sin is not in the books, it's in your hearts. Leave the library alone, says Chris. I love it. Another movie reference to wrap up this day. We'll see you back here tomorrow.